everybody, welcome to the first episode of Airsoft Field Reviews. Today we'll be going over the swamp SNF scenarios in Lebanon, Oregon. We'll start this off by going over the pros of the field and then going over the cons of the field and giving it the overall rating for its field review. One of the good things about the field right off the bat was it had great close quarters and medium engagements. This doesn't mean that it's impossible to run a DMR or a sniper setup, it just means that it's going to be harder to find those good engagements that you're looking for from a very long distance. Now if you are running a sniper rifle, it's best to stick towards the outside of the map where most of the long distance engagements are going to happen. A big question that I've already gotten requested in a few emails was to go over gameplay and game layouts and whatnot for each of the fields that I go to. On this field, the game layouts were really simple, but they packed a lot of action into the small area that they do have. The two games that I was able to play in before I had to start walking around the field and recording was the 8 flag domination and the HVT rescue. With shooting this video being the first time that I had ever been to this field, I didn't know too much about the games, I didn't know too much about how the flow of everything went. The players and staff were both very friendly when it came to helping explain how the games went, what the objectives were, and what parts of the map we were allowed to go to. And after airsofting for about 15 years now, this is probably one of the least toxic fields that I've been to when it comes to the player base and what types of players show up. Everybody was really friendly and they were more than happy to help and make sure the experience was a good time. In addition to the good field layout with plenty of cover and plenty of players and making the game just overall a good experience, the swamp also has a full retail shop on site selling everything from random paintball gear to airsoft magazines to airsoft guns to CO2 to green gas to even EG67s and tag-ins. And for the modest price of $35 for an all-day pass, this is definitely one of the cheaper and better fields to play at in the Pacific Northwest. Now that you've heard the pros of the field, let's go over the cons of the field. The biggest thing that you'll see right away playing at this field is you'll understand that it's called the swamp for a reason. Because of its geographical location, the area receives a lot of rain throughout the year, and the field is very, very muddy and very wet. And with all the mud and water around, it makes it very hard to maneuver unless you feel like going for a swim in full kit. And with all of this wet movement and limited movement, in addition to that, there's a big crowd usually at this small field. Now, big crowds aren't necessarily bad, however, it does introduce some other factors, like making it very hard to move from your position late in the game when everybody on the enemy team is using full auto to pin down every part of the field. And the last bit of the field that what I would consider a con was the timed respawn. The way that they did the respawn made it so you respawned in waves after a certain amount of time has elapsed. I do see how a timed respawn would help to make it so objectives can be taken and people can't just keep sprinting back and forth throughout the game. However, it does also make it really easy for one team to spawn camp the other, just as my team did later in this video. The way that we're going to work all these ratings is each category is going to have 20 points each to get a total of 100 points. The categories that we'll be grading the fields on go as follows: game flow, player base, staff, field layout, and wildcard. The game flow category is going to be described as how well the games operate on an autonomous basis. This means that players don't need too much intervention from staff to understand how the game is going. For this category, the swamp scored 20 out of 20 points, because their games were simple yet complex at the same time, so that way beginner players could have a good time and experienced players can work their tactics and do what they do best. And for the player base, they also scored 20 points, because the players were very friendly, they were more than willing to help, and oftentimes they'd cooperate with you to actually push the objective instead of sitting in the spawn complaining. For staff, the swamp also scored 20 out of 20 points. Their staff were very friendly, they were more than happy to explain the games, and if there was a problem on the field, they were quick to respond to make sure it didn't stop the gameplay for anybody. For field layout, the swamp scored 15 out of 20 points. The reason being for it being 15 out of 20 and not a 20 out of 20 was all the water hazards and deep mud on the field that made it hard to transcend a lot of the portions of the field without getting up to calf deep in mud or water. The last portion of grading, the wildcard, is going to be based off of what about the field makes it stand out against the other fields in the area. The wildcard isn't necessarily going to be one of the core important items that gets graded on. However, it will be what sets that field apart from the others to give it a better rating and a better score. For the wild card, the swamp got an additional 10 out of 20 points. This additional 10 points comes from actually portions of the field layout. On this field, they have a lot of CQB areas, they have buildings, they have school buses, they have woods, they have way out in the open bunkers, they have all kinds of just out of the ordinary obstacles that you can be shooting from, shooting through, taking cover behind, and using to maneuver. This brings our total score for the Swamp SNF scenarios in Lebanon, Oregon to 85 out of 100 points. If you have the chance to, I definitely recommend stopping at this field for a day of play. You have to schedule your reservation in advance, however, the games always sell out, so there's always a minimum of 100 people with the COVID restrictions that he has in place. As special thanks out to Ralph and the guys at the Swamp SNF Scenarios. You guys did great, you got a great field going on, and I can't wait to come back out in the future. Check the link in the description so you can check out their Facebook page, leave them a like, and shoot them a message with any questions that you have. Until then, we'll see you in the next video.